She was 3 years old when her father died in a car accident, leaving her mother alone in a small apartment in Queens, New York, with almost no money and no clear plan. Her mother worked as a model and a showroom sales rep to keep the lights on, and the girl grew up surrounded by the fashion industry without ever being part of it. She dropped out of design school before finishing her second year, got hired as an assistant, and spent the next 2 decades learning every corner of the business from the inside out. By the time she launched her own brand in 1984, at 35 years old, she had already spent half her life preparing for it without ever being sure it would happen. Within a decade, Donna Karan, New York, and its sister brand DKNY had dressed presidents, first ladies, and some of the most powerful women in the world, and had built a fashion empire that defined how an entire generation of American women understood what it meant to dress with confidence. This is the story of how a girl from Queens who had nothing became one of the most influential designers in the history of American fashion. If you are new here, welcome. If this kind of story is what brings you back, hit the like button right now, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Now, let us get into it. Donna Fask was born on October 2nd, 1948 in Forest Hills, Queens, New York. Her father, Gabby Fask, was a tailor, a man who worked with fabric and fit for a living, and who passed that sensitivity to clothing onto his daughter before she was old enough to understand it. When Donna was 3 years old, her father was killed in a car accident, and that loss shaped everything that followed. Her mother, Helen, was a model and showroom sales rep who worked the fashion district in Manhattan to support the family, which meant Donna grew up moving between two worlds, the working-class streets of Queens and the professional edges of an industry built on image, aspiration, and the appearance of wealth. Neither world fully claimed her, and that tension would eventually become one of the most important creative forces in everything she built. Helen Fask later remarried a man named Harold Flaxman, who was connected to the garment trade, which deepened the family's ties to the industry even further. Donna grew up watching her mother navigate the fashion world not as a designer or an executive, but as someone in service to it, selling other people's visions to buyers who would never know her name. She absorbed that world the way children absorb everything, not through study but through constant exposure, learning its rhythms, its language, and its unspoken rules long before she had any formal training in it. By the time she was a teenager, she already knew she wanted to be a designer. She did not want to sell someone else's clothes. She wanted to make her own. Donna enrolled at Parsons School of Design in New York City, the most prestigious fashion design program in the country. She was talented, focused, and impatient with the parts of school that felt abstract or disconnected from the real industry she already understood intuitively. In her second year at Parsons, she applied for a summer job at Anne Klein, one of the most respected American sportswear labels of the era. Anne Klein herself was a pioneering designer who had spent years making the case that American women deserved clothing designed around their actual lives rather than imported European ideals that had little to do with how most women moved through the world. Klein hired Donna for the summer, and the summer never ended. Donna Fask dropped out of Parsons before finishing her second year and went to work full-time at Anne Klein. She was 19 years old. She did not go back to finish the degree, and she never needed to. If you are enjoying this story, right now is a great time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video. More stories like this one are coming, and you do not want to miss them. Working under Anne Klein was the education Donna needed in a way that Parsons never could have been, because Anne Klein was not teaching theory. She was running a real business, making real decisions, managing real collections under real deadlines, and Donna was inside that process from the beginning. Klein was a demanding and precise creative force, someone who believed that women's clothing should work for women rather than simply impress critics, and those values left a permanent mark on everything Donna would later do on her own. Klein also recognized Donna's talent early and gave her increasing responsibility as the years passed, treating her less like an assistant and more like a collaborator, as Donna's own design instincts sharpened through direct experience. Anne Klein was diagnosed with leukemia in the early 1970s. As her illness progressed and her ability to work diminished, Donna took on more and more of the creative load, leading collections and managing the design process with a confidence that had been built through years of proximity to someone who did the job at the highest level. When Anne Klein died in March of 1974, Donna Fask was 25 years old. The company was left without its founder, its creative center, and its most recognizable name at a moment when the fashion industry was watching to see what Anne Klein would do next. The company's backers made a decision that surprised the industry. They promoted Donna, along with designer Louis Dell'Olio, to lead the Anne Klein label as co-head designers. She was 25 years old, barely out of her early career, and she was now responsible for one of the most respected names in American fashion. She held that position for a decade. It was a decade of serious professional growth, of learning how a major fashion label actually operated at the business level, of understanding production, licensing, retail relationships, and brand management in ways that pure design training never would have taught her. She designed collections that were critically respected and commercially successful. She built relationships throughout the industry. She earned a reputation as someone with genuine design instincts and the discipline to execute those instincts under pressure season after season, without missing a deadline or losing the thread of what the brand stood for. By the early 1980s, Donna Karan, now using her married name from her first marriage, was one of the most experienced designers working in American fashion. But she was still building someone else's vision, maintaining someone else's name, and working within the limits of someone else's brand identity. That was about to change. The decision to leave Anne Klein and start her own label was not made quickly or easily. Donna had spent nearly 17 years at that company, first as an assistant, then as a co-head designer, and the security of that position was real. She had a salary, a staff, a production infrastructure, a retail network, and a brand name behind her that carried genuine weight in the industry. Walking away from all of that to build something from scratch under her own name with no guarantee that the market would follow her was a different kind of risk from anything she had faced before. But the creative pressure to make something entirely her own had been building for years, and by the early 1980s, it had become impossible to ignore. Her husband, Stefan Weiss, was a sculptor and businessman who became her creative partner and her primary source of encouragement during this period. Weiss believed in her vision with a certainty that matched her own, and he brought business judgment and operational thinking to a partnership that was equal parts personal and professional. Together, they worked through what a Donna Karan label would actually stand for, not just aesthetically, but philosophically. What did Donna believe about how women should dress that was different enough from everything already in the market to justify building a new brand around it? The answer she arrived at was specific, practical, and genuinely revolutionary for its moment. Donna believed that the professional American woman of the 1980s was being failed by the fashion industry. She was being sold either masculine power suits that erased femininity in exchange for authority, or feminine clothing that sacrificed practicality for beauty. Nobody was designing for the full reality of a woman who needed to move between a boardroom and a dinner and a weekend and a school pickup without changing her entire wardrobe or her entire identity. Donna believed she could solve that problem. In 1984, Donna Karan and Stefan Weiss founded Donna Karan New York, with backing from Tomio Taki and Frank Mori of Takihyo Corporation, who had also been investors in Anne Klein. The founding investment was real but not unlimited, and the pressure to produce a debut collection that justified the risk was immediate. Donna had one chance to introduce herself to the market as a designer in her own right, rather than as the person who had been keeping Anne Klein running, and she knew that the collection had to say something clear, specific, and new. What she presented in her debut collection in 1985 was not simply a group of clothing, it was a system. She called it 7 Easy Pieces, and it changed the conversation about American women's fashion permanently. The concept behind 7 Easy Pieces was elegant in its simplicity and radical in its implication. Donna proposed that a woman's entire working and social wardrobe could be built around 7 interchangeable core garments, each designed to work with every other piece in the system. The foundation was the bodysuit, a garment that could be tucked cleanly into any bottom without bunching or coming untucked during a long day. Around it, she built a wrap skirt, tailored trousers, a blazer, a cashmere sweater, a leather jacket, and a simple evening skirt. Each piece was designed in a palette of neutrals, primarily black, and each was made with the kind of quality fabric and construction that gave them both luxury and durability. The idea was that a woman could get dressed in the morning with confidence and move through her entire day without having to think about her clothing again, because every combination worked. It sounds straightforward now because it has been absorbed into the general vocabulary of how professional women think about their wardrobes. In 1985, it was a genuinely new idea. Yet the fashion industry of that era still largely operated on the assumption that women wanted to be directed by fashion, told what to wear and when to wear it. Donna was proposing something different. She was proposing a wardrobe built around the woman's life rather than around the designer's seasonal vision, and she was presenting that idea not as a compromise, but as a luxury position. The fabrics were exceptional. The construction was precise. The system was intelligent. She was not simplifying fashion. She was elevating practicality to the level of art. The response from buyers, press, and consumers was immediate and decisive. The debut collection received reviews that positioned Donna Karan as a major new voice in American fashion, and the commercial demand confirmed that the press response was not just critical enthusiasm, but real market appetite. Within the first year of operation, Donna Karan New York was generating revenue that validated the founding investment and established the brand as a serious player in the American luxury market. Women who wore the clothes talked about them in terms that went beyond aesthetics. They talked about how the clothes made them feel confident, capable, put together without effort, which was exactly the emotional experience Donna had designed toward. The brand had found its voice immediately, and the market heard it clearly. The years following the debut collection were years of disciplined expansion, driven by a clear and consistent point of view. Donna Karan New York grew its collection each season, as deepening the original concept of 7 Easy Pieces into a full brand world that included evening wear, accessories, and eventually fragrance. Every extension was evaluated against the same founding question: does this serve the real life of a real woman? And does it do so at a level of quality and design intelligence that justifies the Donna Karan name? That standard was not always easy to maintain under the pressure of commercial growth, but it remained the governing principle of the brand's creative decisions throughout the late 1980s and into the 1990s. Donna also understood marketing in a way that distinguished her from many of her contemporaries. Her advertising campaigns were deliberately provocative by the standards of American fashion at the time, presenting women in positions of authority, sensuality, and complexity rather than simply as beautiful objects wearing beautiful clothes. The imagery reinforced the brand's message that Donna Karan clothing was designed for women who had full lives and full identities, and that choosing the brand was an expression of that fullness rather than a submission to fashion's demands. The campaigns generated attention, occasionally controversy, and consistently communicated a brand identity that was sharper and more specific than most of what surrounded it in the luxury fashion market. By the late 1980s, Donna Karan New York had established itself firmly in the upper tier of American fashion, dressing clients that included Hillary Clinton, the most visible professional woman in the country, along with executives, entertainers, and public figures who needed their clothing to work under the kind of scrutiny that most people never face. Clinton's consistent wearing of Donna Karan clothing throughout her years as First Lady gave the brand a level of visibility and credibility that no advertising budget could have purchased, because it placed the clothes in the context of genuine power rather than aspirational imagery. Donna Karan New York was not just being worn, It was being worn by women who mattered, in situations that mattered, and that association was inseparable from what the brand represented. The launch of DKNY in 1988 was one of the most significant strategic decisions of Donna Karan's career, and it came from the same place of practical observation that had produced 7 Easy Pieces. The core Donna Karan New York line was a luxury product with a luxury price point, which meant it was inaccessible to a large portion of the audience that admired the brand and understood its values but could not afford to participate in it. Donna saw that gap not as a limitation but as an opportunity, a chance to create a second brand that spoke to a younger, more urban consumer at a lower price point without diluting the reputation of the flagship line. DKNY stood for Donna Karan New York, but it also stood for the city itself. The brand was positioned explicitly as a celebration of New York, its energy, its pace, its diversity, and the particular kind of confidence that came from living in one of the most demanding urban environments in the world. Where Donna Karan New York was about the boardroom and the black tie dinner, as DKNY was about the subway and the sidewalk, and the Saturday morning and the Friday night. The aesthetic was more casual, more street-influenced, and more immediately accessible than the flagship line, but it carried the same underlying commitment to clothing that worked for real women in real life. The DKNY launch generated enormous commercial and cultural momentum for the broader Donna Karan brand. It introduced the name to a generation of younger consumers who would grow with the brand, and it created a marketing platform centered on New York City that gave both lines a shared identity more distinctive than either could have maintained alone. The DKNY advertising campaigns featured New York streets, New York faces, and the raw visual energy of the city rather than the polished studio imagery typical of luxury fashion marketing at the time. They felt different because they were different, and that difference communicated exactly the authenticity and urban confidence the brand was built to represent. By the early 1990s, DKNY had become one of the most recognized fashion labels in the world, and together with Donna Karan New York, it formed a two-brand architecture that reached from luxury to accessible without losing the coherence of the founding vision. Donna Karan New York went public on the New York Stock Exchange in June of 1996, valued at approximately $600 million at the time of its initial offering. The woman who had grown up in a small apartment in Forest Hills, Queens, whose father had died before she could remember him, who had dropped out of design school at 19 and spent 17 years building someone else's label before trusting herself enough to build her own, was now presiding over a publicly traded fashion company with 2 global brands, hundreds of employees, and a name recognized in every major city in the world. She had done it not by imitating what already existed in the fashion industry, but by asking a genuinely different question about what women needed and then answering that question with precision, consistency, and creative courage across more than a decade of work. The achievement was not simply financial. Donna Karan changed the conversation about American women's fashion in a way that was specific and lasting. Before 7 Easy Pieces, the dominant framework for how professional women should dress was largely borrowed from men's fashion or imported from European designers who had built their reputations serving a different customer in a different cultural context. Donna built a new framework from scratch, one that started with the actual life of the woman rather than the aesthetic preferences of the designer, and that framework has been absorbed so completely into the general culture of women's fashion that it is now difficult to recognize it as a specific invention at a specific moment in time. That invisibility is itself a measure of how thoroughly the idea won. When an innovation becomes so standard that people forget it was ever an innovation, it has succeeded completely. What Donna Karan proved was that the most powerful brand identity is not the one that imposes the strongest vision, but the one that most accurately reflects the truth of its customer's experience. She succeeded not because she was more creative than her competitors, or more aggressive or better funded. She succeeded because she was more honest about what women actually needed, and she had the courage to build an entire business around that honesty. at a time when the industry's conventional wisdom was pointed in a different direction. A girl from Queens with no inheritance, no family connections, no design degree, and no guarantee of anything, built one of the most influential fashion empires in American history by trusting what she knew and refusing to let anyone convince her that what she knew was not enough. That is the story of Donna Karan. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.